let's take a look at the functional analyst. So the functional analyst is right here in the organizational team role diagram. And as you can see, the role is between the solution architect and the user representative. So the functional analyst talks to the user representative, collects the business requirements, and then composes a functional specification document, sometimes called a functional design, and hands this design over to the solution architect for further processing. So the responsibilities of the functional analyst are the following. The functional analyst is responsible for all functionality. And this is a formal responsibility. So when a software project completes and a software product is deployed, if there is anything wrong with the functionality, the functional analyst is going to get the blame. So this is really a formal responsibility within the organization. The functional analyst basically spends his or her time capturing business requirements, and then consolidating business requirements, taking this huge pile of requirements and combining them. And finally, communicating these consolidated requirements to the rest of the IT team, specifically the solution architect. So capture, consolidate, and communicate. Now, during this capturing process, the functional analyst continuously asks questions, because the information can be in conflict with itself. So it's very well possible that one business representative says the software product needs to work like this, and the other, a different business representative, says no, it has to go like that. So it's impossible to fulfill both requirements. So there's going to have to be a choice. Are we going to do it like this, or are we going to do it like that? Or maybe there's a compromise. Maybe we can do it like that, like halfway between the two possibilities, so that it's both parties are somewhat satisfied with the solution, a compromise. So the functional analyst continuously needs to ask questions. If he or she gets an explanation of a requirement, the analyst should constantly ask, what do you mean? Can you explain? Can you expand on that? And also, most importantly, how does this fit in with what you said 10 minutes ago? Very important, because often the information will contradict itself. So 10 minutes ago you heard we do this, and now they're suddenly saying we're going to do that. So the analyst constantly reflects this back to his or her audience by asking, what do you mean? You said the opposite 10 minutes ago. How are we going to solve this? How are we going to choose between what you want and what your colleague wants? And so on, and so on. So you can imagine this involves a lot of conflict. It's not uncommon for business representatives to get into conflict with each other or with the analyst. So the functional analyst needs to be very adept at conflict resolution, at managing conflicts within the team of representatives, to get this consistent business specification, this consistent set of requirements that everybody is happy with and can live with. So identify and resolve conflicts. That is super important. Finally, the analyst produces a requirements specification. So this is a set of functional requirements for the software that needs to be built. So completely non-technical, purely functional. Think user interfaces. Think abstract diagrams that explain how the software processes information, or how it presents information to the end user, or what the end user can do with the system. Everything described in highly functional and abstract terms. The skill set of the functional analyst is the following. I've narrowed it down to 3 major required skills. So first of all, let me start with this one. First of all, conflict management. The functional analyst is constantly confronted with conflicting information, business reps fighting each other. No, we should do this. No, we should do that. No, yes, etc. Constant conflict. So the analyst needs to be adept at conflict resolution. Conflict management, conflict resolution, sitting down with people, calming down nerves, and getting to a workable compromise. That's super important. Then the analyst needs to communicate the compromise to, pretty much to everyone in the organization. The representatives need to know what will be developed so that everybody's on board. But the solution architect also needs to know what needs to be built. All parties need to be in total agreement on what the software will be able to do when it gets developed. And because the analyst is responsible for functionality, and the entire company will come to the analyst if there's anything wrong with the functionality, it's very important that the entire organization is on board with the functional spec before the implementation starts. So, communication skills. And finally, attention to detail. A good functional analyst is hyper-focused on detail. If he or she receives business requirements and there is only the slightest mismatch with other requirements, a good analyst will spot that right away and will be able to act on that. Because the last thing you want is conflicting requirements in the functional specification, things that simply cannot be implemented, or clashing business departments where you develop something and one department is completely happy and the other department is going to be angry because their requirements have not been implemented. So everybody needs to get on board, and the slightest mismatch in requirements need to be resolved before you start. So a hyper-focused attention to detail right here. So I think those are the 3 most important skills for a functional analyst. So let's look at a longer list of required skills. The analyst needs to be a precise communicator, obviously. The analyst needs to know when detail is necessary and when not. You don't want to go into full detail all the time. So know when to really zoom in to micro detail level and know when you can take a distance and describe things in more abstract terms. The analyst needs to be adept at dealing with differing opinions, because different business representatives are going to have different ideas. So adept at that. He or she needs to have absolutely great relationship skills to make sure that the entire IT team continues to function harmoniously and that there is no conflict within the organization. They need to be very good listeners. When a business representative tells what they want, a good analyst is able to sit back and listen. It's not a good sign if a functional analyst constantly interjects. So instead of listening, constantly says, oh, but you mean this. Oh, but I think you should do it like that. I mean, that's not the job. The job is to listen, to receive the requirements, and then to consolidate them into into a functional, consistent document. So they need to be very good listeners. A good analyst can create precise documents, and it's nice if he or she is adept at using Office, because the functional spec is going to be a Word document, so Word skills are going to be very useful. So let's look at the pros and cons. What are the pros of being a functional analyst and what are the cons? So the pros are, it's a key role. You are responsible for functionality, so it's super important. It's a key role within the organization. And there's going to be lots of interactions. You're going to talk to the user representatives, to business representatives, you talk to the architects, the executives, the C-section is going to talk to you about the functionality. So you're connected to all the major players in the organization. So it's a nice role. The disadvantage of being a functional analyst is that you're going to have to work with really flaky user representatives, people who don't know what they want. People who know what they want, but when they explain it, it turns out to be self-inconsistent, or impossible to implement. You're going to have to deal with two user representatives fighting each other because they disagree with each other's requirements. You're going to see a lot of bad stuff, basically, and you need to be adept at handling that. So that's a con. You can expect conflict. There will be conflict. It's part of your job to be exposed to conflict and deal with it. And if anything is wrong with the final product in terms of functionality, then you will receive the blame. The executives, the CEO or the CTO, will come to you and blame you specifically for missing functionality. So it's an important role. You need to be able to take this responsibility. So, in a nutshell, that's what being a functional analyst is all about.